Welcome back to the next part and the second chapter, where we are now going to discuss on how to set up post-process volume so that we can make and finalize the entire rendering part that comes to setting up that which we already have set up lighting for, but also at the same time is to enable and enhance the entire quality of the environment that comes with the car altogether. In order for us to start off with this, first things we need to do is go to project settings. And what's so important, as part of 5.4's latest new features for the rendering section at least, if you go to rendering part, and what you'll see is that currently the lumens has kind of got divided into better options where you can enable specifically just for not just for the lumens but also for entire hardware ray tracing. As long as you have RTX graphic cards, minimum of 2060, then you should be able to have these working. So you need to make sure you enable that, because currently if you start working with project, you're not gonna see much in terms of the lumens ray tracing, because as you may see it, some of you might experience this lack of shadow wing and extra quality that comes with the lumens. So you need to make sure you enable this, and also make sure you hit lighting for reflection to get better reflections of the car. And if you need to, make sure you also enable some of the settings. Of course, make sure you always have support hardware ray tracing, which it's just already automatically enabled as part of the project. But for now, keep it on this on eye. And if you need to, also you can increase your lumens reflection capture, but that comes at cost, because this can obviously increase the GPU load in terms of rendering, but also real-time reflections that you might get on the car. So keep that in mind. So if you want to in this case, I'll go for like 512. I think pretty much we're good to go. So then we can close this and make sure you also restart it. Next bit, what we'll do, we're gonna add a volume, which is the post-process volume. Now let's just put it somewhere here, far from a car. First things first, let's extend it. We want to make sure it works across the entire scene. I'm going to set up what's most important is the rendering feature. Since we are dealing with the lumens, we need to maximize its quality. So make sure you enable these global illuminations settings. Keep it high. The same goes for the quality here. So you might start seeing some difference now, not as much, but then it will become better. I usually set this to a maximum. And the same goes for skin traces, because this is what gives the reflections as well, thanks to global illuminations. You might not see as much, but if you go closer to certain details, so as you now see, if I set this to mark with max trace, we can also increase the max trace to get extra quality of the global illuminations for the reflections that it's getting from metallic surfaces, but any surfaces that has some reflective shading on it as well available. So another thing I will definitely do is to also enable lumens reflections here. So increase those to its maximum. Set this ray lighting mode to the best one, which is hit lighting for reflection. Increase screen traces, just like we do. Make sure you enable all of them. And these are very important, because this is what you maximize the quality. As you may see, your traces of your roughness start to get better once you increase that. So you get a lot more refined quality of your reflections for metallic surfaces. What does this do? This allows you to have more reflections rays hitting across the environment, let's say the objects that you work with, using the ray tracing capabilities. So in other words, more rays are hitting against any elements that are metallic or anything that requires to be, and in this case, receive the lighting. The more better quality you get, as long as you increase that amounts of light bounces. So in this case, I'm going to set to, as you can see, it's set to 8. And it can also do the same for refraction, because it's for the things that require to have translucent meshes. So for example, objects that has translucency, it's very crucial. So let's say increase it to 5. For now, maybe to 10. And of course, when you get those settings up higher, then obviously your viewport gets slower. So keep this in mind. So make sure you are dealing with lower quality settings if you experiencing some slowdown on your project. So currently it's like reading at 30. And of course, the reason why I did this because I wanted to maximize my quality for the rendering reasons. So I'm going to then turn this off for now. And I'll do the last bit is to also, as you may notice, glass are not really behaving very well because translucent reflections using lumens are still not perfect. So it needs to be also changed to something called ray tracing reflections. And you can set this translucency to ray tracing and it will basically fix the problem. And of course, we still need to add some changes here. So I'm going to set this to 1. And also I wanted to see if I can set this to as long as it's free. I usually get this max refraction raised to 4. You can also turn on the shadows and also turn off the refraction. And that's where you get the maximum quality of your ray tracing capabilities. I'm also going to set our motion blur. I'm going to set this something to, because currently I'm going to only do 24 FPS, and I'll do the same thing for target FPS. I set this to, and I think the amount should be 0.1 just to maximize its better quality as we start rendering. Maybe let me just also try get the better lighting. Yeah, somewhere like this. And I'm also going to do some very cool settings inside the post process. Let me go back to post process. So let me start off with very simple, so bloom. And you can also increase the bloom to get a better lighting being bounced off the surfaces that gives the glare effect of it. Another thing I'll possibly do is also set up the lens flares. And now you start getting lens flare. Of course, you can minimize your intensity or decrease the bokeh size, which means that lens flares are not as blurry. They become much larger or smaller depending on your liking. So I'm going to set this to 0.4 now. And also I'm going to change this to as white. That's fine. The most favorite part here is definitely match effect. So you can get the vignette color of the black tint around the edges, that it's focusing mainly on the middle, keeping darker edges around the camera. So I'm going to set to 0.75. And also there's a very cool new set of these elements that are added to post-process, and you can even make a little bit sharper your visuals. But don't go too much because it may not to look too great. So definitely, because it's part of post-process material, it comes as part of post-process volume. I set to something like 0.6, maybe 0.8. What's so interesting, also depth of field kind of got more built inside the post-process. So adjustments that you've done already in the camera that also can be further adjusted through, customly through the post-process volume. And what I tend to do here is to I set the depth of field further away from the camera, which means that it's gonna a lot more focus on the car rather to be focused not nearby the car but further away, keep that blurred effect that comes behind the car itself. And of course you can increase the depth of blur depending on how far you are from the car. So you keep those in mind just so that you definitely know what you're dealing with this. I'll definitely wouldn't say that you fully use this, but this is something to for you to work out as well if you need to do extra digging to improve your depth of field quality. But for now, let's just leave it as we have it. The last bit I tend to usually do, which I'm definitely use this just for the reference, but you can also do this inside that here inside project, where you can also change your tone mapper, in other words the coloration at the temperature of your scene. So maybe you like a bit things brighter or colder or warmer, and you can just do these changes here. But also remember that we're going to later on use DaVinci for that. So those tone mapping effects can be also adjusted later. But if you wanted to, feel free to try this out. And also feel free to combine these effects and see how far you want to get this across this entire visuals to look much more stunning on the final render that you're going to prepare. So you can see you can make things a bit darker, change the contrast and so on. So this is entirely up to you how you want it to, but as I said, those things will be then later added as part of the DaVinci extension of the course. Another last thing which I really love about this is also use the film grain. If that's something interests you as well, feel free to use that. What's so cool, because you can just basically name all of them, but it depends what exactly you want to try to achieve. But for now, you can just keep the values right on top, which are the ones we need is the one on the top here. I'm going to set this to something like 0.6, and there we go. So maybe I'm also going to change my camera position a little bit down, so it makes us make it look more really cool. And also maybe I can also change the lens settings because currently we are having 74 focal length, so I'm going to maybe set to 50, and I'm going to bring the camera a bit closer. So you see the lens flare started to appear really nicely on the camera. Another thing we'll also do is create the shake of the camera as it travels. And to do this, what we need to do is to basically go to our content drawer and just go to whatever you want to. Let's create a new folder. For this, we're going to call it blueprints. And here, let's go and create a blueprint class, which is going to be camera shake. We are just going to use the shake base for this. Double click on that. You can set those up here. Like if you go and change the settings on your right side of the details panel, or you can basically close this again and go back to our content drawer, double click again into a blueprint. It will basically make a shorter version of it. So now what we do is to set up our first timing, because that's the most important thing, because currently this camera shake effect will only work for 1 second. So for now, let's leave it to 10 seconds. We can keep it as we have it now currently without any changes. So compile that. And now what you want to do is to add this camera shake into our camera. So now you start seeing there's a little bit of the motion, but it's not as clear motion as you can see. So maybe we can increase its intensity to something as maybe 2 on both for the amplitude as well as frequency. So I can then save the compile that. So a little bit their motion maybe doesn't look too right. So maybe what I'll do, keep my amplitude at 1 and then set the frequency maybe to 2. So now it starts singing, and of course now it sort of wibbles there, but I can also do this for the rotation. And I'm going to also check my location, leave the rotation, delete the scale and keep the rotation as well as location. And so if I go further away, and then let's say I keep my transform to this position, and I'm going to maybe slightly adjust my position of the camera, also make a little bit closer, and I'm going to hit keyframe to transform, remove the scale, we don't need that. So now as you can see, the camera moves along with the car, and it creates this very cool effect. And maybe I can also try and see if I can rotate it one more time. And there you go. It's very cool, right? Now it gives you that a super extra advantage over some settings that we've done with camera shake, but also you can also make camera movement kind of a bit more natural, and also trying to achieve the most realistic camera movement specifically for any shots that you're working with. And also we can do is to, if you need to, you can also adjust your manual focus distance. The further you are or close to the car, then things get a little bit blurry when it comes close to the car. And of course you can adjust these by follow up through here, or you can do this manually right here. But what I tend to do is to use this a little eyedropper again, select to some closest like the logo of this Porsche, click on it, and I'm going to literally keyframe that section. So if you go closer, the closer it gets, the more sharper the image of the car's visual becomes, obviously. So this is a very cool exercise. So have some time, have fun with this. Adjust any angles you want to go with. And I'll show you a quick trick what I tend to do when dealing with the different shots. And we can then use this to combine all together. For now, what I'll have you to do is to practice on what you have just learned. Feel free to use any of creativity to express your shots that you kind of work with, so that you have like beautiful visualization for each shot. Thank you so much for this time. It was really lovely to work with you guys on that section. And I'll see you guys in the next following chapters.